Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Monday Musings-Danny SportsWrap for this week, and we're just getting far enough away from that Super Bowl and that electric feeling in Kansas City that now maybe that's just turned into a little bit of a warm feeling that will encompass the city all the way until the Combine and training camp, and St. Joe just got a nice 3-year re-up for training camp in St. Joseph, so that'll be the destination for all the fans, and that should be a wild scene come July as the fans go to see their defending champions of the Super Bowl. But now we're slowly working our way into other sports, and of course, college basketball comes the Saturday focus, as of course on this Monday there are things to talk about, and we'll get to those on this particular day. But Saturday featured yet another day where you could take in all the action of the three colleges, basically, if you wanted to. A little bit of an overlap for Kansas and Kansas State. And Kansas fans got themselves a nice jolt. And Missouri fans got themselves a nice jolt. And Kansas State fans got themselves that same old feeling. As far as baseball is concerned, the Royals do report today in the full squad setting. Most of the regular players have been there anyway. And usually at this time of year, that creates at least a modicum of excitement, but it's really hard to do with the Kansas City Royals right now. Hope springs eternal in the spring and at spring training, and maybe as I listened to my compadre Seren Petro this week, he'll be broadcasting from spring training, and I'll be on with him on Friday on Danny Unleashed as we switch that up from Tuesdays to Fridays. Fridays at 3. Mark it down on your calendars, but the Royals really are, I'm going to have to hear some stuff that gets me fired up. And one thing that I can definitely recommend, however, is Vahe Gregorian's unbelievable piece in Sunday's Kansas City Star about Bubba Starling, maybe as long and intricate and interesting a piece as a personality profile as you're ever going to read. Maybe that'll get you a little fired up. But most of what has gotten people fired up at spring training has been questions about the Houston Astros. As you all know, I'm an Astros fan, and I'll speak to that issue a little bit later on. And believe me, there will be no defense of my beloved Astros, who gave me all kinds of pleasure in 2017 when they won the World Series, but certainly that is very, very tainted now, although not maybe to the extent that I think it should, but still, to a great extent, deservedly so. But let's get into it, as many Kansas City sports fans are likely counting the days to the Combine more than some of the things that I just talked about. Not me, though. I'm ready to move on in sports and still get that great feeling that Kansas Cityans have for the Kansas City Chiefs. Just because you're talking about other things doesn't mean you've forgotten about your Chiefs. So let's talk about some different things coming up on Monday Musings, Danny's Sports Wrap. That comes your way next. We're here with Joe Spiker, the president of Easton Roofing. And Joe, you worked for other companies in the construction industry. What inspired you to start your own company in Easton Roofing?
Well, you know, Danny, when you are working for somebody else, you oftentimes don't get to see the project through from beginning to end, and you don't get the final control over the customer experience. And I wanted to build a place where people can come and get work done on their house and not have to worry about being treated the wrong way, and get a good customer service experience start to finish.
The company slogan is "Where Integrity Matters." Why is that so particularly important to you?
Well, for us, what that means is treating each other with respect at work, treating our clients with respect, and making the right choice, especially when no one's looking. So when you're presented all the time as a contractor with choices that have to be made, are you going to make more money on this if you cut a corner? And we just wanted to make a place and a slogan that said to our people and to whoever is our customer, we're not going to do that. We're going to make the right choice regardless of profit.
Easton Roofing, where integrity matters. Are you thinking of starting a new business? Does your current business feel stuck? Or are you just trying to grow what you already have? Running a business is a lot of work, and it takes the right team to make it all happen. If you're looking to grow your business, call my friends Ben and Greg over at Fuego Consulting. They put together a company that can help you reach your business goals. Whether you're looking to get online, build a social media strategy, or rebrand your business, they can help. Call Fuego at 816-663-9695 or visit them online at fuegoconsulting.com. Fuego Consulting. Let's grow your business together.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at Danny@DannyClinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
Welcome back to Monday Musings, Danny SportsWrap, and I mentioned that jolt of excitement and maybe adrenaline that Kansas fans got on Saturday. Why? Because they had some offense. They exploded. They scored over 80 points for just the second time in league play. There's always a caveat, however, when you play the Oklahoma Sooners, because they just like to play free and easy basketball, so maybe it was a day that many teams would have scored a lot of points, but still, let's take it for what it was. A great day of offense for Kansas, and if they have great days of offense, they're almost impossible to beat because their defense certainly has been traveling all season long. It's been very good, and when you hold Oklahoma in the 60s in a game or just right around 70, that's pretty good work as well. But there were things in this game that you don't know if at all they're replicable, and that certainly was Marcus Garrett shooting, a player who is about 28% in three-point shooting this year and far less than that in his career, hit 6 of 9 three-pointers. Oklahoma basically just let him shoot the ball, a basically wise choice. They chose to double-team Udoka Azubuike. Many teams do not do that, and you usually pay for it, but they certainly didn't pay for it here. Azubuike still had a good game, and Garrett hit 6 of 9. Normally, he'd probably hit more like 2 of 9. Do the math. 4 less, 12 points. Maybe it's a ball game. Maybe Lon Kruger is saying that to those around him when the strategy blows up in his face. But still, Kansas just keeps on winning, but Baylor just keeps on winning. And it seems more and more that Baylor will have an opportunity on their home floor to win the league. It's hard to imagine now with just 6 games left in the league that Kansas could go to Baylor, not win, and still get even a share of the league title. And if they got a share of the league title and lost, then basically everybody would consider Baylor the champion, although even in those ties, I believe the league still gives 2 trophies out. You just get the number 1 seed if you're Baylor. Here's the Kansas schedule the rest of the way. 1 game to wait before that big game in Waco, as Iowa State provides the opposition on Big Monday, and then the game at Baylor. That's another 11 a.m. game, by the way, as Kansas seems to have secured that slot over the past month or so, early in the day basketball for the Kansas Jayhawks. Then home against Oklahoma State. No way that's going to be a loss. At Kansas State, there's always some drama and trouble and potentially in Manhattan, but Kansas State is struggling, so we'll get into that in a minute. Then home to TCU, an automatic win, and then a challenging game, of course, at Texas Tech. Very difficult game to conclude the season, real marquee matchup, and Texas Tech seems to be finding their stride a little bit as well. Baylor has more potential landmines in their schedule, but as I said, even if they were to drop a game or two, if they win the game against Kansas, they probably get the league, and for back-to-back years, Kansas will be denied a league championship. Oh, my God, horrors. So at Oklahoma for Baylor, Oklahoma usually plays better on their home court than the game against KU. Home game against Kansas State, difficult to see that one going anyway, but to the Bears. At TCU, potentially dangerous, I guess, a little bit. TCU will be fighting for what they perceive as still an outside chance to make the NCAA tournament. Home game against Texas Tech for Baylor, and then they close the year at West Virginia. So each team, if they were to need to win in the final game, both Kansas and Baylor definitely have challenges on the road for the final day on March 7th. Kansas at Texas Tech and Baylor at West Virginia, but the top-ranked Bears, as I said, on this Saturday will basically, in my mind, have a chance to grab the league title, and they'd have to do some really bad stuff besides that in order not to get it. Nice day in Columbia, Missouri for the Missouri Tigers. Tigers don't often put 85 points on the board. Tigers are a good defensive team, but then again, the Auburn Tigers, a ranked team, don't often shoot 1 for 17 from three-point range. And you have to give some credit to the Missouri Tigers. They have been a good defensive team, and they play defense like they always do in this game, an 85-73 win, which is very tough, very rugged, and allowing the other team to parade to the foul line, as Auburn did again. That's the only reason they were even in this game. 46 trips to the free throw. It is one of the things that makes Tigers games a little bit difficult to watch because they are among the worst teams in the country at allowing teams to go to the free throw line. I think their ranking is in the 330s as far as that is concerned. So they can't seem to play without fouling, but in this case it didn't hurt them, and that physical nature seemed to affect the Tigers. Bruce Pearl got thrown out of the game, and just a good day for the Tigers, who played pretty well after a couple of bad losses on the road. They've won 2 of their last 3 and played a very good LSU team down to the wire. So the Tigers seemingly have done what Kansas State hasn't been able to do, and we'll get to the Cats in a minute, is to create a sense of some kind of worth to be playing for at this point in time besides pride. The Tigers are 11-13 and 3-8 in conference play, but they still have a pretty favorable schedule down the stretch, and they have an opportunity to perhaps get out of that bottom 4 slot, which means that you have to play on Wednesday at the SEC tournament, and any dream of making some kind of Cinderella run really becomes that much more impossible if you have to play one other game. Missouri's fighting too many injuries. They're too inconsistent offensively, but they do seem to be showing some nice signs of life and getting some great performance from Xavier Pinson of late. And Drew Smith also had a nice day yesterday. The Tigers, again, don't often shoot over 50% from three-point range, but they didn't go crazy with it either, only putting 13 of them up. So just a good day at the office for Cuonzo Martin's team, just when it seemed like the season was headed in an absolutely dreadful direction. A nice home win and seemed to be trending in the proper direction. So Missouri Tigers, winners of 2 of their last 3, looking on an uptick and seeing some good signs for Cuonzo Martin and his squad. Not so much for Bruce Weber and his squad. The Kansas State Wildcats have a very difficult prescription every single time they go out on the court, winning games in which they never score more than 67 points. 67 points. Get a load of that. Not exactly a bell ringer total of points in a game, and the Wildcats have scored more than that one time in conference play, one time this year, and that just makes it really, really hard to win basketball games. As usual, the Cats did something that they seemingly often do, which is fall behind in a game, this time by 10 points to TCU, rallied back, were right in the game. In fact, they had the lead with about 8 minutes to go, actually under 7 minutes to go, but they scored only 5 points in the last 7 minutes of the game. Got a pretty nice game out of Xavier Sneed, but again, 2 for 12 from three-point range. A TCU team that had lost 6 consecutive games, really controlled much of the evening, and Bruce Weber has gotten some decent performances from home as younger players, and they do have a rather highly touted recruiting class coming in, but this season is headed towards perhaps the worst one in a couple of decades for the Wildcats. And when we mentioned that Missouri really has something to play for, the Wildcats really don't, except for improving, showing some pride, getting the younger players to perhaps get some more playing time, because at 9-16 and 2-10, there's no even dream of the NIT. I guess you can say in the conference tournament you can make some noise, but again, they'll be playing an extra game. It's just not a good feel for the Wildcats. It's a season that can be accepted more because they've had a couple of good ones in a row, but they really, in the grand scheme of things, what next year brings, okay, it'll be a young team, they'll say it a lot, but back-to-back bad seasons in college basketball in any power conference when you're not qualifying for the tournament or worse is a prescription to get your coach at least in very hot water, if not fired. That may seem harsh, but I don't think it is. About 40 teams from power conferences tend to make the NCAA tournament in any given year, and if you're not one of those, then in consecutive years, not every year, that's reserved for the bell cows of college basketball, and even they have slip-ups in years. North Carolina's not going to go to the NCAA tournament this year, teams like that. But still, consecutive years out of the tournament is dodgy, and we'll see if Bruce Weber is able to turn things around, because, as I said, he has gotten some good play from some of his younger players, but one thing that's resounding in our local college basketball this year is the fact that scoring and shooting is important. That's how you keep score. And yesterday, Missouri wins because, in part, they shoot the three ball better from outside at 7 for 13. Kansas puts a smile on their fans' faces because they shot well from outside and they scored some points. And Kansas State continues to lose and look kind of boring doing it because they can't shoot and they can't score. And in this year where scoring is down all around college basketball, it certainly has been evidenced by what we have seen in the college basketball ranks around these parts this year. As I mentioned, a little bit warmer weather here, but not like Arizona. And some attention will be paid to the Royals cranking it up in Arizona. And we'll talk about that coming up, and also the other baseball issue that is really dominating the talk as far as spring training is concerned, that of the cheating scandal of the Houston Astros. Coming up next on Monday Musings, Danny Sports Wrap, right here at the Reasonably Irreverent Podcast.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent Podcast after this.
Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Vision's goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300.
For many people, a family law case will be one of the most difficult experiences in their life. The law firm of Kenneth McRae will help you through it. Personal and effective help from Ken in concert with you will develop a unique strategy for your unique case. As Ken always says, divorce can be civil law, not civil war. Licensed in Kansas? Visit McRaeLawOffice.com or call 913-972-4765.
Hey guys, it's Brian Haney, voice of the Jayhawks, and Matt Llewellyn from the 23rd Street Brewery. Matt, I've got a bunch of buddies coming over to watch the big game, and I need some ideas on what to cook.
Hey, let me handle it, Brian.
You're going to come over and cook for us?
For you? Maybe. But you should just let 23rd Street Brewery cater it. We could bring a big pan of Bill Self mac and cheese, wings, veggies, naked nachos, and anything else you might want.
Great. Well, you want to stick around and watch the game?
No, I've got to get back to the brewery and watch it on the big screen.
The place to get great catering and watch all the games, the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at Danny@DannyKlinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for joining me again for Monday Musings, Danny's Sports Wrap here on the Reasonably Irreverent Podcast, and we'll be with you each and every Monday with this particular template for our Monday podcast, and of course the rest of the week. There's all kinds of things at DannyKlinkscale.com, blogs and film reviews and personality profiles and other sports and all kinds of good stuff. So thank you for coming aboard and listening. Let's talk a little baseball now. I think Kansas City fans are going to have a tough time wrapping their arms around the fact that the baseball season has any significance, particularly when their football team just won a championship. This is really an important year for the Kansas City Royals. That sounds strange to say because I don't think it's going to be a great year. But one thing you don't want it to be is a dreadful year with a dreadful start. The Royals have lost over 100 games 2 years in a row, and with the Chiefs' mania at an all-time height, of course, it should be. They won the championship. You'd at least like to see some signs of life out of the team because the fans are going to be swept up in the team trying to repeat and just enjoying what they just did, and Patrick Mahomes dominates the city. And another 100-loss season would start to head the Royals towards maybe complete irrelevance. And that would be a shame. It would be a disaster. Now, the one thing that, or the two things that have something going is they have a new manager in Mike Matheny, and they have new ownership. And to me, that is about the encouraging thing to think out about this team, because I do think that John Sherman seems to be somebody who really, he's not going to be an overbearing involved owner, but I think he's going to be somebody who really, really wants to demand excellence and do things a proper way, probably willing, in my mind, it seems anyway, willing to spend money and maybe not care about making that much money, maybe even willing to take a slight loss in order for the team to be competitive. But right now, all that being said, it is very difficult for me to see real daylight for the Royals. You look at their everyday lineup, which is projected to be Whit Merrifield, Alberto Mondesi, Jorge Soler, Hunter Dozier, Alex Gordon, Salvador Perez, Ryan O'Hearn, Maikel Franco, Nicky Lopez, probably in somewhat close to that order. Who knows? We might see some spring training surprises. That's a representative offense. I think the Royals are going to be a reasonable offense. It sounds like there could be some real upsides, but even the best things that we see there, like Soler's breakout season last year when he had 41 home runs, in the context of all that's going on in baseball with the way that offense is played these days, that's not necessarily as great as we might perceive it to be. I think this offense does have the chance to do some things, but for instance, when Whit Merrifield plays the majority of his time in the outfield, which it seems like he's going to, that hurts his value. If he played second base every day and did what he does, he's one of the top second basemen in the game. He's just a guy in the outfield, and that sounds strange for someone who can bring so many talents to the table, but offensive numbers are expected in the outfield, and that's what he does. And he doesn't hit for a tremendous amount of power, and he's a good defender, but he's not a great one. He's just a good one for somebody who's a second baseman by trade. But the keys to this are some of the younger guys and some of the experimental projects, because the likes of Alex Gordon, who supposedly had a bounce-back season last year, and really it was just a bounce-back from being absolutely awful. I mean, he had OPS was 740, 12 homers, 59 runs batted in, 246 batting average. That's just not somebody you want from a middle-of-the-bat lineup, a guy who's playing in the middle of the lineup. The return of Salvador Perez certainly should help. And if Perez plays the majority of his time at catcher, the great majority of his time at catcher, and doesn't wander down to first base too often, then he is really a plus player. Because at that position, being able to hit in the 20s in home runs and hit for a reasonable average and drive in some runs and be as good a defensive catcher as he is in the season before his injury last year that he missed with Tommy John surgery, he threw out the highest percentage of runners in Major League Baseball. You hope he's not compromised as far as his arm is concerned by the surgery. It happened so early last year in spring training that you would think that in this day and age, people bounce back just tremendously well from that surgery, and let's just hope he's not compromised in any way, because that certainly still is one of his great strengths. But we know you're going to get something out of Whit Merrifield, and Jorge Soler, while I think he'll probably fall back a little bit in power, looks like a legitimate power source. Hunter Dozier looks like a player on the climb, and he needs to be. But really the keys here are the Alberto Mondesi, Nicky Lopez, and in a different way, Maikel Franco. I think first base is going to be problematical. Ryan O'Hearn has not shown enough for me. Maybe somebody else steps forward. But Mondesi has the chance to be a star. But we keep waiting and we keep waiting. You can see the tools, and I think eventually he may end up in the outfield. And Bobby Witt Jr. is somebody who really has to come along for this franchise to thrive. But Franco was once seen as a great prospect. He has only become a reasonable power hitter, and some of the numbers that you see look decent at a time. He's hitting the home run. He's hitting the high 20s in home runs, but as I said, you have to think of things contextually. He also plays third base, which is an offensive position. And Nicky Lopez has been just plain disappointing. Now, I don't see it as disappointing as some, because when you look at his minor league numbers and what he did, they seem very difficult things to replicate, the contact rate, everything else. And so far, we've seen that at the major league level. Now, he did come on a little bit as the season wore on, and he got more experience under his belt. And there'll be nothing wrong for a ninth hitting slap hitter if he gets his average up in the 280, 290 range, if he fields a great second base, and to be a viable player. But for him to really be an offensive plus, that seems like a long shot to me right now, but the Royals feel like that still is a possibility. And Franco is only 27 years old. There still is talent there. He supposedly has something to prove, but he's been in the major leagues long enough that you kind of feel like he is what he is. And Mondesi is a real key. They need a star. They need a big star. If he plays offensively as well as it seems like he can, combining speed and power, that would play in the outfield. He probably would be a plus defender at the very least, and maybe a great defender in center field. But he's been here a while. He's been prone to some injury, and It just has to happen. It has to happen for the Royals to step forward. But all that being said, even if the Royals get some positives, some pluses on the offensive side and become a, say, top 12 offense in Major League Baseball, you just don't see it as much mattering. I mean, their rotation, every single pitcher in their rotation last year posted an ERA, or projected rotation, of at least 4.15. Well, they all were in the fours. There was nobody worse than that, but Danny Duffy, Brad Keller, Jake Junis, Mike Montgomery, Jorge Lopez. It's just not imposing. And they're waiting for the young pitchers to come along, and they have to. And the bullpen looks like it might be okay, but certainly not a powerhouse. And that's the part that makes you not think that the Royals are going to take a step forward. Their offense might be pretty good, and even if it's better than that, it's probably not going to matter. And there's people that you think can maybe step forward a little bit. Maybe it was just a minor step back for Jake Junis last year. Brad Keller maybe can take a step forward. Danny Duffy at this point in his career probably is what he is. And then the rest of it is scattershot. So, as I said, spring training should be more about optimism, and maybe we'll get some stories that'll make me feel good about it. But I don't expect the Royals to be a bad team this year. But maybe that's just me being more optimistic than I actually sound right now. But to me, the odds of them approaching a 500 team aren't particularly good. So it is difficult to get fired up at this point of the year, and it's probably more difficult for fans because of the exhilaration that they just experienced from Kansas City Chiefs football. What does have people fired up at spring training certainly is the Houston Astros and their cheating scandal. And as you know, if you listen to me through the years, I am an Astros fan and have been for a long, long time. And they put me through a lot of misery through the years and then quite a bit of exhilaration in 2017. Actually, it started before that. And I was in the stadium when the Royals had the Miracle Rally in 2015. That was a great team, and it looked like they were on the verge of winning then. They would so 2 years later in 2017. And now all of that is being completely torn down. Should it all be completely torn down? No, I don't think so. But the Astros deserve every bit of criticism that they're getting. It is tainted. They knew that they were breaking rules. They willingly broke the rules. The organization, this is the shame of it. I think even Kansas City baseball fans, or baseball fans in most parts of the country, maybe except New York, I think they had kind of an affection for the Astros and their organization. They had been bad for a long time. They seemed to be the new model for baseball, and whether it was just tanking or creatively getting a wave of young players who were enthusiastic and seemingly lovable. And they were led by a teeny tiny little ball player, Jose Altuve, and we'll get into him a little bit later on. But in the end, the dark truth was that this organization was really led in all the wrong ways. There were connections to Kansas City. The owner, Jim Crane, went to college in Missouri, and so there were backstories about that. And all that seemed to be part of the good story. But what has come even before the cheating scandal were stories about the culture of the Houston Astros and their treatment of the media and their treatment of women, and that it was a ruthless, cutthroat, win-at-all-costs type of setting, which eventually we found out was the core of the cheating scandal. The metrics and the code-breaking and the sign-stealing came from the top. The manner in which it was done, either with the banging of the trash cans or eventually more electronic use, they've denied all along. They've used buzzers. Major League Baseball's report hasn't said that they did. But I think a lot of people believe everything, because there's a lot of people throughout baseball who kind of knew about this culture of the Astros. They didn't like it. They didn't like the Astros. And while on the surface to us fans, it seemed like a cute fairy tale story with a bunch of enthusiastic young guys who were jumping around and having fun, there clearly was a dark underside to it. And I do think, as I said, I'm not going to defend the Astros in any way, shape, or form, but I will make a couple of points here. First of all, the whole idea in baseball to making signs and being deceptive and using keys and the third base coach tugging on his ear and wiping his shirt and everything else is to distract the other team and throw them off and make them incapable of figuring out what the actual sign is. That's why a catcher goes through a Morse code-like flickering of his fingers over and over, and so that you don't know what actually is the sign, even if you can see it. So while I think that the Astros absolutely did something wrong because electronic use of cameras and things like that to dugout monitors and then relaying that information to the batters is against the rules. And they broke the rules, and they deserve the punishment they got, and they certainly deserve the shame that they are receiving. But on the other hand, I sort of have this undercurrent of, aren't you supposed to be able to trick them with your signs? Isn't that part of the culture of baseball? And that doesn't seem to have been done particularly well. Danny Duffy, in an article in the Star on Sunday, talked about the fact that he and his catchers adjusted when they played the Astros because there was an undercurrent that something was going on as far as sign stealing is concerned. One of the more comical things, I think, that is shown when they show highlight packages of the Astros is they consistently show Jose Altuve's game-winning home run off of Aroldis Chapman in the series against the Yankees in 2017. Well, Aroldis Chapman throws fastballs all the time. So, and furthermore, we'll get into Jose Altuve in a moment. I mean, he just hums one fastball after another in there. So you don't really need to steal signs to know what Aroldis Chapman is going to throw. But so that's just an aside there. But it was Altuve who hit the home run, and now Carlos Correa has come out and offered the only really vigorous defense, and Correa's been one who is probably the most really remorseful player, and has said, hey, we did all these things wrong in 2017. We did clean it up eventually. We played clean baseball in 2019 and made the World Series. Many people won't believe that, and maybe I don't believe it. But he defended Altuve and said he wanted no part of the sign stealing in any way, shape, or form, that he used to go in and get angry. And the other part of it that is a shame here is that the Astros, by their statistics and by their win totals, showed that they didn't need to do what they did. In 2017, their championship year, they won several more games on the road than they did at home. Jose Altuve, for instance, and of course, everybody says that he wasn't part of the sign stealing anyway. He hit .381 on the road on his way to his MVP. So Cody Bellinger's comments about Altuve, I think, are ill-served. All the other anger, well-suited. And I think the Astros are in for a dose of stuff, and I think it's going to be bad. And I think Astros games are going to have to be monitored very closely by the umpires. I think people are going to get thrown out left and right. I think fans are going to boo them lustily. And in the end, I think the Astros probably will kind of hunker down and maybe use it as a bit of a rallying point. You're looking at us closely now. We're not cheating. Here we go. We're good. And they are good. But their 2017 championship and maybe 2018 season as well is rightfully stained. And while I think there are some reasonable things that can be said on the other side of it a little bit, it does seem like it was an organization that was run completely the wrong way. Probably the only person I feel sorry for, well, at least until people started throwing shade at Jose Altuve, is A.J. Hinch. Because I truly believe that Hinch didn't want this to go on, but you have a fine balance as a manager. When this is created and your players are doing something and they're kind of embracing it, are you just going to say, you can't do it? No, I don't want you to do it, and maybe lose those players? I don't know. He in the end, he should have, but it's a hard thing to do. You're managing men as much as you are managing baseball a lot of time. And in being around A.J. Hinch, I truly do think he's probably somebody who wants to do the right thing, but maybe didn't think that that was the best way to manage this group of players. Maybe he felt deep down, hey, we win games on the road anyway. Maybe there's just a little edge for the players. I don't know. People around baseball seem to think it's a huge edge. As I said before, you should be able to be a little bit more deceptive of the signs that you're giving. But all the criticism of the Astros is well warranted. In the end, it won't take away the feeling that I had when I was laying on my back on the carpet with my fingers in the air with number 1 in each hand and the champagne I drank that night in my rainbow jersey. That feeling is something I'll remember fondly no matter what. And it will not make me feel any less that I had a great time then. Do I feel like the Astros deserve criticism? And will their legacy always be tarnished? Yes, it will. And it should be. But I still will remember that evening very fondly and that championship very fondly. and I'd enjoy it way more fondly if all this hadn't gone on. And the shame is now that the Astros aren't any kind of lovable team, and they will just be a hated team that nobody will root for, and it's no fun being a fan of that particular team. That'll wrap things up for Monday Musings, Danny Sports Wrap, and maybe somehow there's a Cinderella story out there for the Kansas City Royals. It doesn't seem like through our history the Royals and the Chiefs have ever been able to be good at the same time, and seems to be playing out that way once again, but we shall wait and see. Talk to you all the time, and in this forum, next Monday for Monday Musings, Danny Sports Wrap, right here at the Reasonably Irreverent Podcast.
This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like Easton Roofing, the presenting sponsor of Kansas City Profiles at the Danny Klingscale Reasonably Irreverent Podcast. Easton Roofing, where integrity matters. We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Klingscale Reasonably Irreverent Podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new.